Yesterday was the year anniversary of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, in which a woman was fatally struck by a car that was driven into the crowd. If you followed the hyperventilating press coverage leading up to yesterday's event, you probably expected to see thousands of hooded Klansmen showing up on horseback in D.C. to commemorate and celebrate the killing. White supremacy is just that prevalent in America, they tell us. It's everywhere. Except it's not. That's a lie. White supremacy is not ubiquitous in America. It's not a crisis. It's not even a meaningful category. It is incredibly rare. You could easily live your entire life in this country without meeting a single person who believes anything like that. Most of us have lived lives like that. I have. In fact, this is a generous, tolerant country. It always has been that. People who tell you otherwise are either delusional or trying to control you with fear, likely both. In the end yesterday, just a couple of dozen people showed up out of a country of 320 million people. They milled around for a while, got yelled at, and left. So much for the Klan rally. What is a crisis in America, and a growing crisis, is left-wing extremism and violence. Our elites abet and encourage it. Our media pretend it doesn't exist. Here, for example, was the scene yesterday in Washington. Antifa lunatics calling for the destruction of the United States of America. Watch. Benny Johnson of the Daily Caller took the time to interview some of the protesters. They freely confessed they would like to torture and kill the president.
What would you do if Donald Trump showed up at this rally? Murder him?
I mean, yo, he's America's Caesar, except he's a head. So, you gotta take him down.
Trump! If it came down to it and it was a group effort, we'd have to do him like Gaddafi.
If the president showed up at this march, what would you do, sir? Beat his
Meanwhile, in Charlottesville, protesters screamed at the cops. In D.C., they attacked police with bottles, fireworks, and eggs. Keep in mind, this is not the far right, it's the left. Cops on motorcycles were pushed as they tried to pass through the crowd. Back in Charlottesville, an NBC News reporter was assaulted by a screaming progressive. Watch this.
What's up? Don't worry about that now. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about them.
Amazingly, and it is amazing, NBC News didn't even bother to cover the assault on its own staff. The left did it, so it would have undermined their storyline. Screaming leftists in black face masks throwing bottles and calling for the destruction of America and the murder of the president. You know how CNN described this group? As, quote, anti-hate groups. Because their hate isn't really hate, it's the opposite of hate, even if it's exactly the same as hate. Pretty amusingly Orwellian, but also scary. Lying works over time, and that's exactly why they do it. Vox.com, in a rare fit of honesty, ran a piece entitled Antifa Clashes with Police and Journalists in Charlottesville and D.C. Well, that was too close to the truth for many on the left, and they complained. HuffPo, for example, did. Its hate and extremism reporter Christopher Mathias tweeted this, quote, "This is a bad article and is a good example of how not to cover white supremacy." A bad article. In other words, objective truth is bad when it obstructs the goal, which is gaining power. So lie or else, and most reporters do lie. But we don't have to lie. We can say what is obvious. The very people decrying fascism are the ones practicing fascism, crushing those who disagree with them, silencing contrary opinions, which they do constantly, threatening violence as they did yesterday. They can call it anti-hate all they want, but the truth is they would hurt you if they could.
A loose movement of sort of malcontents who are protesting people that they don't believe in. This is a movement that condones outright violence.
Absolutely. So I think if you look at just their name comes from a communist group that brawled with the Nazis in Berlin in the 1930s. I think violence is intrinsic to what they do. It's what separates them from other leftist protesters. I think they're very open about that. They come, armed and dangerous and ready to start a riot.
But it's unbelievable to me that they have this mentality that if they don't agree with you, politically, which you're allowed to do, that's what our country is made on, that justifies violence against you.
Right. So their whole tactic is to say that it's okay to punch a Nazi and then to call everybody to the right of them Nazis. Right, to call 2/3, 80% of the country, because they're not happy with a large part of the Democratic Party either, anybody to the right of them a Nazi. And once they've already justified violence against a group that everybody hates, or the vast majority of Americans hate, then they go ahead and ramp it up to calling everybody a Nazi. It's kind of a nice sleight of hand.
Right, and I think that's a really good point for our viewers to remember what you said. Everyone to the right of these people on the extreme left is considered a Nazi. This is not actual neo-Nazis or actual white supremacists. Not that I'm condoning violence against them, but what they label as Nazis are far, far from Nazis. Just anyone who happens not to agree with them.
What speech do you want to ban? Tell me, what words do you want to ban? You guys can't talk? No. You guys just hold up signs and wear masks? If you want to look at that. What's up with a mask? Is there actually Nazis out there? Because I haven't seen any. Yeah. I just see the American flags. Are you guys sure? Are you guys positive that they're Nazis? 100%. 100%? Oath keepers. Oath keepers are Nazis, that's what you're saying. You realize no one gives a fuck about you. You realize you think you're more important than you really are? So they don't want to talk, they just want to give out their points real quick and just like leave. So does anyone want to give a statement here? Why are you wearing masks? You realize no one gives a fuck about you. Alright, dude. You realize you think you're more important than you really are? And yet here you are talking to us. Have fun. Yeah, because I'm a reporter. I'm trying to see what's going on. Why are you guys here? I'm trying to spread your message. I'm trying to spread your message.
What are you a reporter with?
I'm an independent reporter. I write for a couple magazines. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Professional journalist. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Good for you. You're so important.
Yeah, I'm not like mainstream media perpetuating false narratives about what's going on and that they're Nazis. So why are they Nazis? Tell me, why are they Nazis? No, you don't have an answer? Why are they Nazis? You guys are claiming they're Nazis, they're KKK members, but you guys don't have an answer. Look at that, they're just silent. They're probably like this in class as well. They probably like just don't say shit. They're like embarrassed to actually talk about their real issues.
They organized with people who marched in Charlottesville. We're not against speech, we're against violence, and the alt-right has been murdering people in the United States over the last year. This is an objective fact. What we are protesting is their political goals, not their right to speech.
So why are they all alt-right? Why are you saying they're all part of Nazis?
This rally is an alt-right person.
Who's the alt-right person?
Kyle Chapman.
Kyle Chapman that he was at the Charlottesville rally.
Yeah.
And was he a speaker at the rally, or did he just attend?
No, he just beat a bunch of people with sticks.
And did Antifa beat a bunch of people?
Not say anything else.
Okay.
Last week, the media hyped yesterday's Unite the Right 2 march, a white supremacist gathering in Washington.
A large gathering of white supremacists in the nation's capital who will march for the same abhorrent reason that they marched on that day a year ago.
Come Sunday, white nationalists and bigots like the ones you're seeing on your screen from a year ago are expected to once again take to the streets, this time in front of the White House.
As the White House pushes back on her allegations that the president is a racist, thousands of white nationals are preparing to demonstrate just outside the White House this weekend.
Did he say thousands? Well, despite all that, the supremacists managed to turn out a whopping 20 protesters. They were far outnumbered by the members of the press, whose news organizations undoubtedly spent gobs of dough giving them free airtime to the pathetic, largely irrelevant band of racially obsessed malcontents. So have the media ever given this much pregame publicity to a march that actually turns out, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of protesters? Most of them young. They often show up in bitter cold or freezing rain. You know, like the annual March for Life? I don't think so. But that annual event is positive and life-affirming and respectful and attended, as I said, by mostly high school, college kids, and it does not advance the left's agenda. But the weekend's white supremacist circus had possibilities. The president rightly tweeted before the much ballyhooed supremacist march in Washington the following. He said the riots in Charlottesville a year ago resulted in senseless death and division. We must come together as a nation. He wrote that he condemned all types of racism and acts of violence, and he said peace to all Americans. Well, since Trump rode down that shiny escalator to announce his candidacy, journalists have worked overtime to paint him as an avowed racist. Well, every view he has, for instance, on law enforcement, standing for the national anthem, the travel ban, and, of course, on immigration, they all allege it's racially motivated. It can't possibly be that the president advances policies and ideas because he believes it's going to be good for Americans, good for safety, good for the American worker. No. Well, you add the tragic events of Charlottesville a year ago, and you had the media's backdrop going into this weekend's Unite the Right freak show. Those sad 20 figures were swamped by over 1,000 counter-protesters, and some did carry signs that simply read kindness or love, and that was heartening. But the real fireworks happened when these folks showed up. It was basically a family affair. Well, Black Lives Matter and, and the domestic terrorists posing as protesters, a.k.a. Antifa, were present and revealing the ugly underbelly of what could have been a powerful statement against true hate. Instead, here's how CNN, though, classified all the non-white supremacists as, quote, anti-hate groups. Huh. I don't know about you, but just like we all know what the vile hatred of racists sounds like, we should all know what it sounds like when directed at a racially diverse police force who are standing there either in the heat or in the rain just trying to do their job on Sunday.
All y'all that are protecting the they want us dead.
They wanted to get at where the 20 racial-obsessed malcontents were. Well, apparently protesters like to tear each other limb from limb and want the police to get out of the way. And if you happen to be driving a vehicle in the vicinity yesterday, this is Black Lives Matter's way of spreading love and peace. Now, if these guys have nothing to hide and they're on the side of right, anyone ask them why they're wearing masks? To conceal their identity from law enforcement? You know why? Because they destroy property, they harass officers, throw projectiles at them, and they just attack the innocent. Now, this next video, this couple's crime, well, wearing Trump t-shirts.
Says Trump 2020 and has to walk around with security and escorts because they're saying that she's a Nazi.
Still, the media coddle Antifa and these leftist protesters, largely because their anti-Trump message aligns with the one prevailing in a lot of American newsrooms. But if they're going to cover for them rather than cover them, will the media now align themselves with this message too? At least they're rhyming. Not that you'll see or hear many of those images on other media, of course not. Even when these lunatics, by the way, turn on journalists, attacking reporters in the street, cutting their cords to their cameras as they did this weekend, the media they want to look the other way.
Don't be shoving on people. What's wrong with you? Yeah, and get that out of my face. I got it. Come here. Okay. I'm his side. Hi, guys. I'm his side.
Clever. Well, this was posted by an NBC reporter on his Twitter account. It shows his camera crew assaulted by these nut jobs.
You snitch. You. What's up? Don't worry worry about this now. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about them.
Yet later, when NBC went to coverage of the event with the same reporter, they omitted the fact that their own crew had been assaulted, and they showed no video of the incident. Huh, how curious. Imagine if some conservative group oriented had done that to a reporter, what they would have said. They get upset when the Trump crowd screams, Acosta, go home. Well, the media are actively concealing the heinous actions of these fringe groups because they serve their ends. No matter the tactic, no matter the violence or mayhem, these groups are largely given a pass because they are brazenly, vociferously, consistently, vitriolically resisting Trump.